Well, hello everybody, this is OneBigOwnage and today I'm here with a full guide to solo NEX. First, I'm gonna go over all the things you need to know before soloing NEX. Then I'm gonna go over all the phases with all 3 of the combat styles. You can here click on any of the links on screen to skip to that portion of the guide. First up are the skill level requirements. You want to have at least level 95 in all of the combat skills. You want to have at least level 96 summoning, that is for a pack yak. Then you want to have at least your required level to make overloads. If in your case this is level 92 and you can boost, that's completely fine with me, as long as you can make overloads. Then you want to have at least level 95 prayer to access the ancient curses, to have not only soul split, but also turmoil, anguish and torment. Supplies. When I go in solo NEX, I take about 26 rocktails. 6 of those are in my inventory, the rest is in my yak. I take 5 super restore flasks. You only need 2 or 3 per kill, but I would rather be on the safe side and take 5 per 2 kills. Then Serdom and brews. I take 12 flasks with me. 3 of those are in my inventory, 9 of those are in my yak. Adrenaline potions. I take 1 flask, so you can use 3 sips per kill, which is about right. Then we have useful auras. I myself like to use Supreme Runic Accuracy or Supreme Sharpshooter to speed up the whole kill, but also get a really easy blood phase. Then I like to use Supreme Invigorate because it lets you keep a little bit more adrenaline after you use an ultimate, which can be especially helpful in the ice phase since you can get off 1 more threshold every single cycle. Then at last we have Vampirism, which helps you throughout the whole kill. This will let you keep 5% of the damage you hit as HP, which can be really useful on the Zaros Phase. Now we are in the gear section of this guide. I myself like to use a magic/range setup because you have a very good defense against NEX if you wear magic armor. A magic/range setup is probably the easiest way to go if you're new to soloing NEX or NEX in general. You can see I wear full Virtus armor and a Seismic 1 in Singularity, but you can always change this out for defensive armor like Port's armor. It's required to have tier 90 weapons of at least 1 combat style, but preferably 2. It's also required to have a ring of vigor, and I like to use Supreme Runic Accuracy. In my inventory I have a Supreme Overload, a Prayer Renewal and an Adrenaline Flask. You can of course change this out for a normal overload. I also have Dust Runes to cast Earth Wave, and I bring Soul and Chaos Runes to cast debuffs on NEX. I have Unicorn Stallion Scrolls in my inventory and a Unicorn Pouch in my yak. I bring a shield and a range switch, which is always needed because you need range to kill the minions effectively. With my range weapon switch I also bring 3 out of the 5 pieces of my range armor. Last, I have a Ring of Wealth in my inventory. It's of course entirely possible to go the melee/ranged setup, and this is probably also better DPS, but since melee armor is very vulnerable to the magic attacks from NEX, I prefer to not use melee because you need to eat more. You can see I wear full Torva armor and dual Dragon Rapiers. This can of course be switched out for Port armor for better defense. I again have Ring of Vigor, and I like to use Vampirism because it helps with the increased damage you take because you're wearing melee armor. With both the setups I take a Sign of Life because this can be very helpful if you fail an Ice Prison. I recommend taking a Sign of Life over a Scrimshaw if you're new to soloing NEX. My inventory is about the same, except I don't need to bring runes, so there's more place for food and brews. First up is the Smoke Phase with magic. First you want to go ahead and set your quick prayers. I set them to Torment, Protect from Magic and Protect the item in case I die. Then you want to go ahead and enter the next room. When you enter, you want to go ahead and stand in the corner with the lamp. Then you want to equip a shield, wait for NEX to spawn. When NEX spawns, you want to click on the minion that spawns in the corner. Use the abilities Escape, Anticipate, Resonance and Preparation. The order of these abilities doesn't really matter since you're only building adrenaline. After that you walk to NEX. You might want to use an adrenaline potion here, but it's not required. Pot tap right now with your overload and your renewal. You want to tag NEX with a bleed and then just walk back. Right when NEX comes around the corner you want to use the ability Freedom. Now you just want to use thresholds to get NEX down. Finally she will call There Is. When she calls that you want to use a bleed again. And you might want to pray Soul Split just to heal a little bit. Right when she comes around the corner you want to use the ability Anticipate, so she can't wreck you. Then you want to go ahead and kill NEX further. When she calls Fumus, you want to go ahead, equip your range switch, go ahead and kill the minion. Also, whenever she calls the second line of text, you want to use the ability freedom again, so she won't drag you. Next is the smoke phase with melee. The beginning is exactly the same, you just build adrenaline on the minion. Then go ahead and go to next. You want to pot up as well. I do drink an adrenaline potion just to make the first phase a little bit quicker. When next spawns, just attack her. I like to use a couple of thresholds just to get her down real quick. Then she will call there is. When she does this, you want to step away a couple steps to one of the edges. Use the ability search to go away, otherwise you will be dragged into the middle, which will deal high damage up to 5000 damage. Then I just resonance to get a little bit of HP back. I go ahead with attacking next. I go ahead and attack next more, get some thresholds off, and she will call for Fumus. When she calls for Fumus, I go ahead, take my range switch and kill Fumus. Don't forget to use freedom and anticipate the right moment to not get dragged. Then you've killed Fumus. Next up is the shadow phase with magic. You want to go ahead and attack next. You can soul split for the first couple of seconds of this phase because next won't attack you. She will spawn, however, shadows under you. You want to go ahead and walk away from those shadows, otherwise you will be hit for up to 4 or 5k. Then you just want to use thresholds to get next down really quick. This isn't a hard phase, just want to make sure to never step on a shadow. Now next we'll call the next minion, which is Umbra. Again, you want to take your range switch, go ahead and kill the minion Umbra. While you're killing this minion, make sure you have at the end of killing 100% adrenaline and 100% HP. I failed here as you see, but I'm gonna fix it. I just used the same trick I used at the beginning of NEX. I go ahead, stand in the corner, attack a minion and build adrenaline on it, just by using the abilities I used before. Now when I have full adrenaline, I can use one resonance and then I'll be ready to go for the blood phase. Next up is the shadow phase with melee. Here you can see I attack next, but she also called there is, which will make her go to the middle, and she actually wants to go ahead and run up to you, run away, and run up to you, and then run away again. But you don't want that because it's a huge waste of time. What you want to do is go ahead, walk to the middle like I did here, and then actually just walk back, and she will switch to the next phase. Here you can see I put bleeds on next, and every single time I do damage to next, I immediately run away. If you stand at next too long, you'll actually get melee distance damage, which is multiple damage a second and can hit really high. As you can see, bleeds on next is really effective, because you need to run away, but it will still damage next. Next will actually call the minion Umbra. You want to go ahead, put on your range switch, walk to Umbra, and then you want to attack Umbra while eating up to full HP. At the end of killing Umbra, you want to have full HP and full adrenaline, so make sure you don't use the threshold to kill Umbra. Make sure you're all potted up, still watch out for all the shadows she spawns, and then just walk back to the beginning where you want to take on the blood phase. Next up is the shadow phase with range. This isn't much different than the shadow phase with magic, except the fact you can only use one of your pieces of range armor. I prefer to use the top. If you use more than one piece, next will come to melee distance to you and actually deal lots of damage. You don't want this to happen because it can easily screw up your solo or even kill you. The rest of the phase is exactly the same as with magic. Now we need to face the blood phase, which is seen as the hardest phase by most beginning soloers. I slowed down this clip just so it's easier to follow for you. Every single siphon you want to start out by putting a bleed on a reaver and maybe use another basic ability like Chain or Rich Rocket because they hit both of the reavers and NEX as well. You then want to use Sunshine if it's off cooldown, which it should be the first siphon. Then use an adrenaline potion, use 2 basic abilities to get up to 50% adrenaline. Then you want to use one out of the 2 best thresholds, which are Wild Magic and Asphyxiate. Then do basic attacks until NEX calls for a sacrifice. Escape the sacrifice and get straight back into melee distance of NEX. It's important to get into melee distance because NEX heals 100% of her magic attacks as if you didn't use any prayers or damage reduction. After you came back into melee distance, you want to use the other threshold, the one you didn't use before. After that you want to use Tendrils if it's probably off cooldown. Then do basic attacks and after the next siphon repeat the process but now without Sunshine. It's important to attack the reavers as NEX will heal their leftover HP at the end of every cycle. Every siphon you want to do the 2 thresholds on NEX and always use Sunshine whenever it's off cooldown. Simply repeat this process until NEX is down to 80k HP. Then go ahead and kill off the 3rd minion. Now we are going to conquer the blood phase with melee. It is much different from magic and range, but there are some little tweaks. First you want to use the ability Berserk plus an adrenaline potion. Do 2 basic abilities to get up to 50% adrenaline, then go ahead and use Destroy, which will hit high damage on NEX. If you did an early Destroy, you can use Assault right after that. But if you use Destroy a little later than the beginning of this phase, you want to wait for Sacrifice and use Assault after it. If you haven't got it by now, use basic abilities until the next siphon starts. Next, you should do melee tendrils on NEX and build up to full adrenaline for the 3rd siphon. The next siphon you want to use the ability Frenzy, which will hit NEX for very high damage. Another strategy is to use Assault, Destroy and melee tendrils whenever they are off cooldown. Of course, take in consideration that you shouldn't do any of these right before the sacrifice or when the cyclist is about to end. Make sure to put a bleed on the reavers because it will greatly help your blood phase. After you got NEX down to 80k HP, she won't heal up again, so you don't have to worry about the sacrifice. But it's still advised to get away because it will still damage you for to 1.5k. Remember that Backhand and Sever are basic abilities with very high damage. Next up is the blood phase with ranged. This isn't much different from magic and melee. You should again during the blood phase always use death swiftness whenever it's off cooldown. Use an adrenaline potion and use fragmentation shot on a reaver, and you could also use ricochet and damage both of the reavers and NEX as well. But now you should have at least 50% adrenaline or more. So use 1 out of the 3 good thresholds, which are Snapshot, Rapid Fire and Bombardment. Again, if you did an early ability, you can get in the second one before a sacrifice. Otherwise, just build adrenaline and wait for the sacrifice. Escape the sacrifice as usual and get into melee distance. Use the 2 other thresholds and do basic attacks until the next siphon. On the next siphon, you cannot do the same but without death swiftness. Of course, don't forget to put a bleed on one of the reavers and remember that bombardment hits the reavers as well if they are close to NEX. You can also build adrenaline on the second siphon so you can use the ability Unload on the 3rd siphon, which is a very good ranged ultimate. Keep in mind that NEX can still walk up to you after she called for a sacrifice, so try to escape not too early. As you can see in this clip, I failed and NEX healed 10k HP. This cost me another siphon, which shouldn't have been the case if I just used escape a little bit later. If you did everything correctly and NEX is down to 80 HP, go to the 3rd minion and finish it off. Now on to the ice phase. It's really important that you tag next the right moment. If the last thing she did was call for a sacrifice and you tag next, the first thing on ice phase will be a contain. If the last thing she did was starting a new siphon, then the first thing on ice phase will be a prison. I prefer to start with a contain because you have to tank less prisons and you can start out with 1 or 2 thresholds. With magic and melee, it will show you one way to get through the ice phase, with ranged I'll show you another. If you start out with a contain, you can do 1 or 2 thresholds and still be able to get up to 100% adrenaline for the prison. Make sure you always use anticipation before she calls, otherwise you will be stunned and can't use barricade or immortality. When you get out of the prison, you want to begin building adrenaline and get up to 100% as fast as possible. Make sure to not stand around next when she does a contain, because you will get stunned and might not be able to get up to 100% in time for the next prison. You can use the following prison rotation: barricade on the first, immortality on the second, barricade on the third, and if there's a fourth, then either eat up or use rejuvenation. The cooldown of barricade is a little longer than 2 cycles, so you want to run around and buy a bit of time so you can use barricade on the third prison. Now we're going to touch on the ice phase with melee. I myself do not like to use melee just because it's hard to build adrenaline if you have to get away every time she does contain. This way you're not able to use many thresholds on this phase and it might take a little longer. This combined with the fact that it's almost impossible to eat just because you'll lose adrenaline and won't be able to tank the prisons makes it a little bit harder. But you can also choose to skip 1 or 2 prisons and just use assault and destroy and eat up for the next prison. Remember that NEX will freeze you on the spot if you take off your magic prayer during this phase. After every 5th basic attack NEX does, she'll either do 1 out of her 2 abilities, which is contain or prison. So keep track of when she's going to do them, as you want to watch out for them and not be hit by contain. When NEX does a contain this, she will also spawn icicles on the ground, which will come to you, and when they are under you will hit you for up to 2000 damage. You can easily avoid this if you use magic or range, but with melee it's a little bit harder as you're close to NEX. It's handy to use brews on this phase as they won't drain your adrenaline and can still tank the prisons, but don't forget that brews also drain your offensive stats, so don't use them too much, and if you do, drink a restorative to get your stats up. The ice phase with range is about the same as with magic, but in this clip I show you another method of going through this phase, a more offensive one. You should tag next on the right moment so she starts out with a prison, that is because you want to stay on the same place you put down your death swiftness. Use an adrenaline potion and quickly use snapshot and rapid fire. Of course you want to have high HP because NEX will prison you in this process. Don't forget that you can use anticipation after you start death swiftness to gain adrenaline and also not be stunned by the prison. Then you want to do as much damage as possible and get the phase done as quickly as you can. This way you might have to take 1 prison less, but you will have to eat up for both of the others as you use all of your adrenaline on thresholds. As you can see in this clip I was lucky and got some high hits in, so if you're confident that you have high DPS this might be an option for you. I myself like to barricade on 1 prison, then DPS and eat through the 2nd prison and use immortality on the 3rd one. This way you still get much damage in, even though you only tank 1 prison. Now we've come to the last phase, the Zaros Phase. This is arguably the easiest phase since NEX doesn't have any special abilities or things you have to watch out for. First I show you a clip of me doing a Zaros Phase with magic without food, to show you that it really isn't that hard if you just use a good defensive rotation. This can be helpful if you had a long blood phase and a bad ice phase, so you have almost no food left. Remember that a unicorn can save you lots of food and is really handy on the Zaros phase. Use resonance whenever it's off cooldown, and also you can soul split a little bit every time you use barricade. Next up is the Zaros Phase with melee. I actually like this one because melee is very good DPS compared to magic and ranged, so you'll get NEX down easily. But you do have to watch out for the melee deflect. Remember that when NEX is either deflecting melee, praying soul split, or has no overhead prayers at all, NEX will quickly switch between the other ones. But when NEX is either deflecting magic or ranged, it will stay on that for about 1 minute, so you don't have to watch out for switching back to melee. Also, when you are in melee gear, you have low magic defense, so resonance will heal you a lot, and devotion might come in handy. At last we have the Zaros Phase with ranged, which is almost the same as with magic, but because you're wearing ranged armor, you will have a lower melee defense and NEX will constantly hit you with melee for up to 3k. So it might be a good idea to switch back to your magic or melee switch and finish NEX with that. Since NEX hits you a lot with melee, you can actually soul split sometimes, which makes it a bit easier. But watch out, because if you don't protect from a magic attacks, you might get hit for up to 5k. Now we came to the final part of this guide, the tips and tricks. First I'll start off with some advice on NEX deflect. When NEX is spraying magic and you really want to do the blood phase with magic, just wait it out and don't tag her yet. This can only take a maximum of 1 minute. Same goes for range if she's deflecting ranged. Then when you're done with the blood phase, I like to only use the style she's not deflecting this skill. So if she's deflecting magic this skill, I'll just use range for the ice phase and range for Zaros phase. Otherwise I'll use magic for both. Then onto handy items. It's nice to take the enhanced Excalibur with you and use it while on the blood phase, so you don't have to eat and lose adrenaline. It can also be used on the ice phase for the same reason. There's a trick you can do to put debuffs on NEX, but not yet tag her. This goes as follows. First you click on the ability to provoke, then you click on NEX and you'll provoke NEX. Then use just debuffs on her and you won't have her tagged yet. This is especially helpful for the blood phase. Now on to ability rotations. It's best to figure one out for yourself. I only provide some for the blood phase, but I learned that it's way better if you find one that you like and is easy to use for you. I found these rotations myself, and once you get comfortable with them, NEX becomes extremely easy. Another thing you can do with the new updates is make use of the new instance system. You can try NEX for free with a boss practice mode instance. This might be handy when you need a couple of tries at the blood phase and you don't want the risk of dying and needing to repair your armor. I used to try it on the beta way back, but now it's even better since you don't have to lobby every time you fail. You just leave the instance, load your solo NEX preset, and get in the instance again and keep trying. At last I give you some advice on food management. If you think about it, you only really need to eat on a second minion to get high HP for the blood phase, then maybe eat on the blood phase, but you can go into the ice phase with pretty low HP, since the second prison you tank will be with the use of immortality. So if you eat before that, it's a waste anyway, because you're gonna die and use immortality. After the second prison you use barricade on the next one, and then you only really need to eat on the Zaros phase. I also want to address the fact that I didn't use best case scenarios, because the chance that this will happen isn't so big when you're just starting out with solo NEX. I could show you a clip of me doing a blood phase and getting 5 times 8k hit and done, but you wouldn't know what to do when you didn't get lucky like that. Now this is everything I have in my guide. I hope it was very helpful for you guys, and please leave a like if it was, because I spent a lot of time making this guide. If you have any questions or critics, leave a comment below the video. Thank you very much for watching, have a nice day, and bye!